Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Keely McCormick. Sean Cuellar is on assignment. We'll get to your top stories in just a moment, but first we start with a live look from our tower cam. Today we're tracking the heat coming to Western Oregon. High in Eugene expected to hit. So let's get right to it with John Mayer. This heat and dry weather are bringing concerns about wildfires, John.
Absolutely. And the biggest concern here is just how early we're starting to get into that fire weather mentality. It is hot. It is dry. It's been exceptionally windy, though thankfully I think those winds will start to calm down a little bit in the days to come. But this is one of the big features that we're keeping an eye on, these brand new burn bans being issued, essentially covering the entirety of the southern Willamette Valley there. And this is going to be something that could linger for a while. After all, high pressure is not showing any signs of stopping, so those clear skies definitely going to be with us as we move on down the line. And it may not exactly be hot quite yet, but we're already getting close to the 50-degree mark at just 9 o'clock in the morning, giving you an idea of how quickly we're getting jump started on some of that warmer weather. In fact, we already have some 50s in Junction City, Newport, Florence. On top of that, I think we'll get into the 60s by the lunch hour, and easily some of the warmest weather we've seen so far this season coming our way this afternoon. But as we head towards the weekend, we could actually see record-setting highs moving back into town. We'll have the latest on exactly how long all of this heat could stick with us coming up in just a bit. Keely?
Thanks, John. Again, the National Weather Service issued a special weather statement for unseasonably high fire danger through the remainder of this week. Because of that, Lane County is starting a burn ban today through next Wednesday. The same applies in Benton County. The Benton County Defense Board says it will remain in effect until weather changes. KVL News will continue to provide information on the burn bans and on the dry all morning long. You'll find information on fire prevention on our website, kval.com. Former Brooklyn Center police officer Kim Potter will be in court for the first time today. She's charged with second-degree manslaughter after killing Wright during a traffic stop. There were clashes last night in Brooklyn Center between protesters throwing things and police using tear gas to disperse the crowd. But most of the day's events were peaceful, including a vigil for Daunte Wright, where he was shot. Omar Villafranca reports from Brooklyn Center.
Your voices have been heard.
Brooklyn Center Mayor Mike Elliott urged calm in the community following the announcement that charges of second-degree manslaughter had been brought against former police officer Kim Potter.
There is nothing I can say or do that will bring Daunte back or ease your grief. His death will not go in vain.
Potter, a 26-year veteran of the force, had been training another officer Sunday when they pulled Wright over for an expired tag. They discovered Wright had an outstanding warrant for a misdemeanor weapons charge and tried to arrest him. When Wright resisted, the former police chief said Potter thought she grabbed her taser, but instead pulled her Glock 9mm handgun with her right hand. An investigator examining Potter's duty belt after the shooting said her taser was on her left side and her handgun was on the right, as seen in this past photo. According to the criminal complaint, the taser was yellow with a black grip and set in a straight draw position, meaning the defendant would have to use her left hand to draw the taser out of its holster. A taser also weighs about 8 ounces, while a loaded handgun is about 2 pounds.
Manslaughter 2 is the least she should get. The least, possibly more.
Civil rights activist Al Sharpton praised the decision to charge Potter.
If she didn't know in 26 years the difference in size and weight of a gun as opposed to a taser, then how was she a veteran in policing?
Potter is now out on bail, and if she's convicted, she could face a maximum of 10 years in prison and a $20,000 fine. Now, we talked to use of force expert Greg Meyer, and he told us that in the last 20 years, there have been 18 cases where officers confused their weapons and fired at suspects, including this case. Of those cases, 8 officers were charged, 3 were convicted, 2 cases are still pending, including Potter's. Omar Villafranca, CBS News, Brooklyn Center, Minnesota.
And the Brooklyn Center mayor says law enforcement officials are working to identify agitators because they know many have shown up to protest peacefully. At the Derek Chauvin trial today, the defense will continue to hammer away at the prosecution's case that the former officer caused George Floyd's death. Chauvin's attorneys argued that Floyd inhaled carbon monoxide from the tailpipe of the squad car. They called a former Maryland medical examiner to the stand, but prosecutors quickly questioned his knowledge about the cause of death.
You haven't seen any data or test results that showed Mr. Floyd had a single injury from carbon monoxide. Is that true?
That is correct, because it was never sent to the laboratory for that test.
I asked you whether it was true, sir. Yes or no?
It is true.
Testimony is expected to wrap up this week. New this morning, the wait is now over for more than 1 million people in Washington state, everyone aged 16 and older, now eligible to get a COVID-19 vaccine. In Oregon, there's a couple more days to wait. Eligibility opens up to everyone aged 16 and over on Monday, April 19th. And remember, opening up the eligibility doesn't mean everyone will find an open appointment that day. Health officials are urging everyone to remain patient. Visited a vaccination clinic in Woodburn on Wednesday. The governor mentioned in her tour that case numbers at one point during the pandemic were high among Hispanic populations, but she sees that she's been relieved to see those numbers go down. However, noting there's still a lot of work to be done.
I'm asking Oregonians if they haven't gotten their vaccinations already to make a plan and get their vaccine so we can move past the virus.
The governor calls Salud Medical Center in Woodburn a great example of a clinic serving a community often overlooked. She says 46% of their patients are migrant and seasonal workers. Eugene City Council heard the results of a survey detailing the impact of the coronavirus pandemic yesterday. That survey was done by the ETC Institute. It asked hundreds of Eugene residents questions about the impact of the pandemic on health and well-being, as well as their financial situation. There were some big takeaways that were concerning but not surprising. 26.9% of Eugene residents surveyed said their financial situation got worse as a result of COVID-19, and 45% of respondents reported emotional distress as a result of the pandemic.
There was a record scratch moment in this presentation, and that has to do with 45%. Did I hear that right? 45% of our community are potentially suffering a mental health crisis.
Other counselors pointed to concerning disparities between white and Latinx respondents, also noted in the survey. The goal of the survey was to identify areas to focus on for long-term recovery from the pandemic. The City Council will have a work session next week to discuss priorities for the future. The 5th rural vaccination event was held in Douglas County Wednesday, and Aviva Health has held events in Drain, Sutherland, Glide, and Myrtle Creek. Their first was on April 1st, and since then, they've given about 4,000 first and second doses. For a lot of people in these areas of the county, having the vaccines come to them is essential. Because they're a federally qualified health center, Aviva Health can vaccinate anyone 18 and older.
I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I've got family that wants to come visit, and they've all had their vaccinations and they're all immunocompromised. So in order to safely be around them, I need to get my vaccine. And I've got my passport. I'm dying to do some traveling.
Another woman told us it's hard for her to walk, so having vaccines come to her is convenient. The suspension of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine won't affect Aviva's vaccination efforts too much. They primarily use Pfizer and Moderna. We have a KVAL update on leadership at Oregon State University. The OSU Board of Trustees hosted a forum with their final recommended nominee for interim president. The opening is a result of former F. King Alexander's resignation last month. That came after an outside investigation found problems with how he handled sexual misconduct issues while he was president at Louisiana State University. OSU Cascades Vice President Rebecca Johnson has been recommended to replace him. Wednesday afternoon, she spoke to the public and answered some questions.
First, we need to establish trust and confidence in university leadership. This starts with listening authentically to the diversity of views, values, and concerns from internal and external stakeholders.
The hour-long forum is on OSU's website and on YouTube. You can provide feedback on the nominee by 5 p.m. today, and another public meeting is set for Friday. The trustee chair recommends Johnson begin interim presidency May 1st and serve for a year or until a permanent president is in office. A KVAL crime alert this morning. Springfield police say a driver's suspicious behavior escalated Wednesday afternoon during a traffic stop. SPD says an officer pulled over Malik Noobsy near 18th and Olympic for a traffic violation. According to police, the officer noticed Newsby trying to conceal something under his right leg. Police then learned he had an outstanding warrant for his arrest for giving false information as police officers attempted to arrest him. But a struggle ensued. Once police got him into custody, they discovered he was concealing a loaded semi-automatic handgun on his leg. Newsby is facing multiple charges, including felon in possession of a firearm. And an emergency alert this morning in Coos County. The sheriff's office say all 911 phone lines are down at this time, including Coos Bay. Here are the numbers to call if in the county: 541-404-5403. Coos Bay's business lines are also working at 541-269-8911. The sheriff's office is asking callers to please be patient with the dispatchers that answer, as they will not have mapping capabilities right now. Be prepared to know where you are.
Well, let's go ahead and kick things outside for a second here with our live shot buddy. He is over on Highway 126. He's over at McKenzie Highway at Bear Creek. This is the 47,000 block there where some work is continuing, attempting for a little bit of recovery after that Holiday Farm fire. They're removing some trees and trying to stabilize the slopes. Long story short, expect delays if you're heading over that way. We're already starting to see a little bit of a backup occurring, an 8 to 10 minute wait time right now as they are doing their best to alternate between east and westbound lanes. So if you're heading over that way, just make sure you're taking it slow. This work will continue from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. today. 45-mile-per-hour speed limit, and just make sure that you're staying safe as you hit the roads. Of course, plenty more of that fire weather danger in the forecast, and we'll get into more on what we're expecting here coming up. Keely?
Well, more than $500,000 is being put to work in Lane County to reduce wildfire risks. The Department of Forestry is investigating $5 million across the state to make sure we're ready. Fire season typically starts in June, but prep work starts now. That's right, the windy, hot, and dry weather increases fire risk, and because of that, Lane County is starting a burn ban today through next Wednesday. Now, ODF is focused on getting rid of fuel for fires. That includes clearing shrubs and clustered trees and sawing off branches. ODF Veneta's Tim Moss says this builds a defensible space around your property.
The main goals of fuel reduction is to create defensible space on your property, which is to protect your structure in the event of a wildfire. You're trying to create a zone around your house or structure where if there was a fire nearby, it can't jump that space.
ODF expects the projects will treat 7,000 acres with miles of fuel mitigation treatments. The new money from the state will also allow the department to buy new equipment and hire more staff. Well, coming up after the break, we'll have more details on 12 people believed to be missing after a boat crash down south.